What's up, everybody? Welcome to Water. My name is Tyler, and I'm your real-life remembrancer. Today, we are back at the PC, checking out Games Workshop's latest reveal for the SQUATS. Let's jump into it. All right, so getting into the article now. If you haven't already read the article, I definitely recommend that you go and do so. It's relatively short, and it's pretty much just focused on the entry to the, SQUATS, the Leagues of Votann lore. And it's very interesting, and it's got some concept art for us to check out. So there's a couple main things that I want to talk about here. The first, I want to talk about the actual article and the content of it, but more than that, I want to talk about my expectations for the future and what this article and the way that it was released tells us about how Games Workshop is approaching bringing the SQUATS back. So the first thing to look at is obviously going to be some of this concept art. Now, this thing right here is a Votann. So Games Workshop is saying that a Votann, that there are more than one, and that it's an ancestor core, which is basically, it's like a giant computer that stores a bunch of data, basically everything that a civilization could possibly need to rebuild or survive or otherwise, reference their ancestry. So you've got stories, STCs, technology, philosophy, just everything that, the Votann, that the kin have been able to cobble together over the last 10,000 years. All of that information, all of their discovery, all of their history, all of that is stored in these ancestor cores called Votann. Now, the interesting piece of lore that they brought into this was that now in the 41st, 42nd millennium, what we're seeing is that the SQUATS are having issues with the memory of the Votann. And what used to only take a few moments to produce an answer for them is now taking months or even years. Or even, I think they even say centuries in some cases. I love this bit of lore because it's super 40K in the sense that it's this really, what would seem to be a really solvable problem in modern society. We today, if you use a computer, chances are there may be a time in your life where you either fill up a hard drive and suddenly your computer gets super sluggish and you have to go delete stuff, or maybe you're doing something that caps out the RAM on your computer, and so you start capping out the RAM and you get a bunch of lag. These are experiences that we can relate to, and the idea that it's happening on this massive galactic scale to this entire race is just super interesting to me. And 40K has always really done a lot to be a little comedic with the way technology is referenced and used in the setting. Obviously, we know that the Imperium is all about no science, no progression, definitely no AI and no computers. And how the Mechanicum gets around that and a little tinkering and upgrade here and we're going to modify this here and it's still okay. But just the sense that the technology in the galaxy at this point for some of these races is just falling to wear and tear, right? It's quite a simple concept. And the idea that in modern society, if I have an issue where I've got a full hard drive or something like that, is pretty simple, right? You just go upgrade your RAM or go buy a new hard drive and you move on. But I love the idea that the technology is so esoteric and crazy and whatever that they don't know how to repair it. And so you're just stuck dealing with this computer that probably needs some duster spray, right? They got to go clear out the dust from the caverns of the Votann. And so I just love that. I think the lore is very 40K fitting, and just this whole concept that they have this technology that was super good, but now they don't know how to fix it, and it's just not as good, and it's kind of developing a mind of its own and stuff. Very 40K, very fitting. I love that. The one other thing that I want to talk about from this article is this piece of concept art here. Now, Valrak did manage to get his video out on this basically the moment that it went live. And one thing that he referenced was that he really likes the armor in this photo and that he thinks that bodes well for the race. Now, I tend to disagree. First of all, I think that the concept art is freaking amazing. I love this. If you haven't already watched my SQUATS are returning video, definitely go back and watch that for my opinions on sort of the first model that they showed us. And then the sense that, they have this sort of fantasy dwarf logo that they're using for the Leagues of Votann, but then we saw the model and it was very like modern and generic. So what I like seeing from this concept art is that you do see the armor that the guy is wearing in the model that was revealed, but it's much chunkier and it has a lot, especially on this character here, it has a lot more of what I was asking for, which is more sort of like dwarven influence, maybe a little bit more Celtic influence, and just a little bit of flavor, quite frankly, a little bit of technological kind of dwarven flavor beyond just like a generic space miner guy. And so this makes me excited. It definitely makes me stoked to see some of the characters and some of the interesting things that they add in to make them a little bit more flavorful. However, disagreeing with Valrak, I don't think that this concept art does anything. He was saying how he likes Gravis armor, and like this is so reflective of that. Concept art in Warhammer is like 99% of the time always chunkier than the actual models. Just look at older art of Space Marines. They're like 6 feet wide, right? So based specifically on the shoulder pads and the chest piece of this concept art, I'm going to go ahead and say that this is no different than what the actual model that's been revealed is wearing. I think it's the same armor. And in that sense, I'm not excited because I would much rather it look like it looks in this concept art than the way that it actually looks on the models. These guys in the concept art are a little bit taller. That he's got kind of skinnier legs, but he's very wide and tall at the top. And that's just not the vibe we get from the model. The model's very squished. The legs are very stumpy and wide. And so I'm thinking that this concept art is not a reflection of what we're going to see in the armor developed. Now, that's pretty much everything I want to talk about in the content of the article. But one last thing that I want to mention before we jump to the next section is that if you're not super familiar with the squats, or you haven't gotten caught up on sort of like where we are, how we got to where we are, and everything like that, there's 2 videos that I absolutely recommend. The first is from Luton09, this man right here. This 40K, the squats return, they never went away. I'll show you. Definitely go watch this video. It's very long, obviously, but I'm sure you're already familiar with Luton, and it's fantastic. And then also Arbiter Ian, he's got his Squats Are Back video. I recommend watching this as well. Both of them cover a lot of the same information, but from 2 kind of different angles. Of course, the Luton's got the heavy lore focus, and really just trying to, despite the fact that what happened with the squats has a lot more to do with like real life than the setting. He talks a lot about trying to get that lore kind of back in the mix and kind of distance the lore from the real life aspect of it and make it fit into 40K. Whereas Arbiter Ian has more of a focus on like a history of the squats as models, as a faction, and sort of what happened with Games Workshop and everything there. So both videos are worth watching on their own merit. And from there, I just kind of want to jump away from the PC and talk a little bit about my philosophy for like what this means for the setting and what this article means for how Games Workshop intends to advance the squats lore in the setting. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that like when they announced the race was coming back, they did so with like virtually no additional information, right? So the first piece of speculation is, are they going to rush these out in 9th edition, or are these going to be introduced in 10th edition, potentially as like a box release race, right? We've always gotten a box of Space Marines versus Xenos. It might be interesting if we get a box of Squats versus Xenos. I don't think we'll see Space Marines versus Squats, although it really just depends on how they deliver the lore to us. As of right now, especially even based on this article that they've just released, it sounds like the lore pretty much still suggests that the squats and the Imperium are at least on good enough terms that they're not killing each other right this second, but that there's a lot of things that could put that agreement into contention. And I think a lot of that has to do with a lot of the speculation around the Men of Iron, squats bringing in the Men of Iron as part of their race, but also as part of their lore, and just generally that the squats appear to have a lot of access to stuff from the golden age of technology, and just the fact that they have general AI and stuff. It seems like they have a lot of that going on. So it makes sense that they're trying to hide that from the Imperium so that they don't get into a fight. But having said that, because that's the way they've chosen to reintroduce them into the lore, I suspect we won't see Space Marines versus Squats box set. But anyway, again, this is like crazy, super wild speculation, right? I'm just trying to talk about what I think this article means for the future, because when they announced the Squats, we had no idea how they were going to bring them back. How many models are they going to get? When are they going to get a codex? What's the lore going to be? Are they going to redo the lore, to make it all fit? Everything like that. And really what this article tells me is that, one, they plan to drip feed information. Okay, so now we've seen the first model revealed, and we've seen like the first segment of just absolutely core lore revealed. And so we can start to make some speculation on what we're going to see with something like a codex release. So whether it's 9th or 10th is irrelevant. Let's just say we get the codex. It does feel like Games Workshop is really going to take the reins here and write new fiction to fit the Squats into the modern setting. Now, I'm really stoked about this, and the thing that I want to touch on or point out is that this is really Games Workshop's first time being able to sort of completely write things from scratch. Now, obviously, since the early days, we had the super, super early days where like Necrons were added and then like Tau were added. Okay, it's been a long time since then. I would say most people that are in the hobby don't remember that. And to them, those races have always been a part of the setting. Slightly more recently, you've got Imperial Knights, Chaos Knights, as well as Custodes being added to the setting. Sisters were kind of like always there. They got brought back. And then, of course, Genestealer cults. Now, none of these factions were quite as squatted as Squats, right? There was never a point where any of those factions really got deleted. It was more just that, the Custodes always existed. The Sisters of Battle kind of, not always, but like for the most part, always existed. And then it's just been a matter of Games Workshop building on those foundations and saying, okay, we're going to do a model line, and okay, we're going to do a codex, which means we're going to create a bunch of stories that fit into the general lore that people are already aware of. Now, obviously, it's varying degrees depending on which race you want to talk about, how much freedom they've had to write that stuff. But ultimately, a lot of those concepts have always existed, and it's just been more like Games Workshop hasn't gotten there yet in terms of fleshing it out. Now, the big difference with the Squats, of course, is that the reason, so as it is quoted, the reason that the Squats failed is because Games Workshop determined that they simply didn't do a good enough job of bringing that motif into the science fiction setting. That means that we're definitely not going to see Squats as they were, right? And so the point that I'm trying to make is Games Workshop has an opportunity here to completely create things out of thin air and basically write whatever they want to write. I think this is super interesting and important to just have in the back of your mind and to keep an eye out on, because it really is going to give them an opportunity. We're going to see what it's like for Games Workshop to have true creative freedom for the first time in a really long time. And, not in the form that we normally see it, where it's a retcon or, we're going to do Indominus lore and bring Gilliman back. And like, that's new and wasn't a part of the setting. All of that stuff still is based in core lore. And yes, some of it, particularly Primaris and whatever, kind of got pulled out of thin air, but it was still all based in these core concepts that we're already used to. Whereas Squats are really, they have free reign. They can do whatever they want for the most part. And it's really just not going to bug anybody because there's nobody to bug. There's a couple of Squats players out there, but let's be real. You're not going to be able to use your old models from the 80s in the new game. I mean, as proxies, of course, but they won't be in the Codex wearing that armor. So anyway, the point that I really just want to focus on is that Games Workshop has a true opportunity here, one, to surprise the fan base, and two, to just do something cool and prove that they can do some good writing. And so far, I really like what I see in this article. So that's great. That's exciting. But more just that, now that we've seen this one article, because when they announced the singular model, we didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't know if in a month they were going to say, okay, here's the whole model range. Here's a 9th edition codex before Imperial Guard. But, sorry, I had to. But, I think that the fact that they're choosing to drip feed it this late into 9th probably means that we're going to see a 10th edition release. Moreover, I think that it might mean that 10th edition is sooner than we thought. they're already going so far as to release, these articles, really get people excited for squats. It won't be long before people are banging down the door trying to get their hands on the first squats kit. And so, I expect to see more articles like this where they deliver us little snippets of lore, and then more reveals. We'll probably see the full tactical squad kit, the basic troops kit, where that singular model came from. They did show in the original announcement video, they had like the black silhouettes of other models from that kit that had like a mining pick and stuff like that. So that kit's clearly already done and like been filmed and photographed and everything. So that's probably going to drop any week now. And that really has me thinking, like, is 10th edition actually a lot closer than we think? Is 10th edition basically coming next summer, 12 months from now, or even sooner? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But ultimately, I think this article does a lot to help us with our speculation. There was a lot of question just after we saw that initial model, what are they going to do? What is the first next step? And now we've seen that, and everything's looking pretty good to me. So I'm very excited. Of course, if you guys enjoyed this video, please hit that like button. If you want to help the channel grow, please hit subscribe. It really helps. And yeah, that was definitely an unexpected thing to see today on Friday, but it is what it is, and I'm pretty excited. I'll see you all next time.